Billionaire was wandering the city, aimlessly, until he froze seeing his ex holding twins' welcome to secrets narrated. Before we begin, drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. When the story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10 and share what you felt along the way. And if you enjoy emotional stories filled with twists and hidden truths, make sure to follow Secrets Narrated so you don't miss the next one. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy every detail. The city sparkled with 1,000 lights, but Miles Harrington saw none of them. At 42, Miles had everything most men dreamed of: a billion-dollar architectural firm that had reshaped skylines across America, a penthouse in Manhattan with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, invitations to every exclusive event from coast to coast. His tall, athletic frame carried custom Italian suits effortlessly, dark hair touched with distinguished silver at the temples, steel gray eyes that could command a boardroom with a single glance. Women turned their heads when he passed, drawn to the combination of classical features, quiet confidence, and that particular aura of power that only comes from building an empire from nothing. But tonight, New Year's Eve, Miles felt hollow. He'd left his own party an hour ago, 200 guests celebrating in his penthouse, champagne flowing, music pulsing, and simply walked out. His assistant had called 3 times. He'd ignored every buzz of his phone. The December air bit at his face as he walked through the streets of Lower Manhattan with no destination in mind. Around him, couples hurried past, laughing, holding hands, rushing toward celebrations. He pulled his coat tighter and kept walking. Miles stopped in front of Colette's, a discreet French restaurant tucked between 2 brownstones. The windows glowed warm gold. Through the glass he could see intimate tables, candlelight, people toasting the coming year. He'd brought Alara here countless times. The memory hit him harder than he expected. 4 years together. 4 years of late-night conversations, of her laugh that always started soft and grew until it filled the room, of mornings when he'd wake to find her sketching at the kitchen counter, lost in her own world. Alara Moore, 30 when they'd met, 34 when they'd ended it. Porcelain skin that flushed pink when she was embarrassed or passionate. Honey blonde hair she usually wore in a messy bun, though he'd loved it best when she let it fall in waves past her shoulders. Green eyes that seemed to see through every wall he'd ever built. She'd been a freelance graphic designer, talented but struggling to break through, living in a cramped studio in Brooklyn that she'd somehow made beautiful with thrift store finds and her own artwork. She'd never wanted his money, never asked for anything except his time, the one thing he'd failed to give enough of. They'd separated almost 2 years ago, not with screaming or betrayal, but with the quiet, devastating realization that they wanted different things. She'd wanted roots, family, a life that didn't revolve around quarterly earnings and international deals. He'd wanted, what? To prove something, to build something bigger. Even now he wasn't sure. Miles turned away from the restaurant, shoving his hands deep in his pockets. The separation had been mutual, civilized even. They'd hugged goodbye, promised to stay friends, never spoke again. In 2 years he'd dated 5 women. Beautiful, successful, interesting women. None of them had lasted more than 3 months. None of them had been Alara. His phone buzzed again. This time he pulled it out, ready to turn it off completely. That's when he looked up and froze. Across the street, perhaps 30 feet away, Alara emerged from a small boutique he hadn't noticed. She wore a long cream-colored coat, a dark green scarf wrapped around her neck. Her hair was longer now, falling in those waves he remembered catching the streetlight. But it wasn't just her that made his heart stop. She was carrying 2 babies, twins, bundled in matching navy blue snowsuits, one in each arm, their tiny faces peeking out from beneath knit caps. They couldn't have been more than a year old, perhaps a bit older. The way she held them spoke of practiced ease, of 1,000 nights and mornings, of a life he knew nothing about. Miles felt the world tilt. The babies, their features, even at this distance, even bundled against the cold, the shape of their faces, something in the way the one on her left turned its head with curious, wide eyes. His eyes. Alara adjusted her grip, balancing their weight naturally, and started walking down the sidewalk. She hadn't seen him yet. She was headed in his direction, though, moving carefully on the winter sidewalk, every step deliberate and protective. Miles couldn't move, couldn't breathe. 2 years. She'd been pregnant when they'd separated. She had to have been. The timeline crashed through his mind like a freight train. Their last night together, the week of silence after, The phone call when she'd said with heartbreaking gentleness that maybe they needed to accept they were heading in different directions. And then nothing. No word. No message. No midnight call saying there's something you need to know. Ilara was 20 feet away now. 15. One of the babies made a sound, a happy gurgle, and she smiled down, murmuring something soft. The streetlight caught her face fully now, and Miles saw everything time had touched. A maturity in her features, a strength that hadn't been there before. Lines of exhaustion around her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights, but also something luminous, something whole. She'd built a life without him. She'd built a family without him. 10 feet. Ilara glanced up from the babies, and her eyes met his. The recognition hit her like a physical blow. Miles saw it. The widening of her eyes, the sudden tension in her shoulders, the protective way she instinctively pulled the babies closer. They stood there, separated by a few feet and almost 2 years of silence, while the city celebrated around them and fireworks began to pop in the distance. Neither of them spoke. Miles looked at the children in her arms, at the impossible reality of their existence, and felt something crack open inside his chest. Grief and rage and longing all tangled together. She never told me. Ilara's lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Her face had gone pale beneath the streetlight, and in her eyes, Miles saw something he couldn't quite name. Not fear, not shame, resignation, as if she'd known this moment would come eventually, and had been preparing for it for 2 years. Ilara, he finally managed, his voice rough. She drew in a shaky breath, clutching the twins tighter. Miles, she whispered back. And the world narrowed to just the 3 of them, the 4 of them, standing on a frozen sidewalk, while everything Miles thought he knew about the past 2 years shattered into pieces at his feet. Would you have told him? Or would you have chosen silence to protect what mattered most? Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Ilara's breath came out in visible clouds. The baby on her right began to fuss, and she bounced gently to soothe her. We should get out of the cold, Ilara said quietly. There's a cafe down the block. They walked in silence. Miles wanted to reach out to take one of the babies, but stopped himself. What right did he have? The cafe was nearly empty. Ilara chose a booth in the back and settled both babies into their stroller with practiced ease. She sat down across from him and finally met his eyes fully. She was still beautiful. Tired, yes. Her hands showed the wear of constant work, but there was something luminous about her now, a groundedness that the woman he'd known had lacked. How old are they? Miles heard himself ask. 17 months. Her voice was steady, but her fingers trembled. Ivy and Julian. 17 months. He did the math quickly. She would have been about a month pregnant when they'd ended things. You never told me. It wasn't an accusation, just a fact hanging in the air between them. Ilara looked down at the table. No, I didn't. The barista appeared, and Miles ordered coffee neither of them would drink. When they were alone again, the silence felt heavier. Why? The word came out rougher than he intended. Ilara's jaw tightened. For a long moment, she didn't answer. In the stroller, Ivy made a small sound, and Ilara reached down automatically to adjust her blanket, buying time. I found out 3 weeks after we separated, she finally said, her voice low. I took the test in a Duane Reade bathroom at 2 a.m. Miles remembered that time. He'd buried himself in work, flown to Singapore for a deal that didn't need his presence. Anything to avoid the empty penthouse. I was going to call you, Ilara continued. I picked up the phone a dozen times. But you didn't. 2 days after I found out, I got a call from your assistant, Rebecca. Ilara's voice remained even. She said you were going through a difficult transition, that you'd made it clear you needed space, that any personal matters should probably wait. Miles felt his stomach drop. She had no right. She was protecting you, and she wasn't wrong. Was she? The question hit like a slap. Those first months after the breakup, he'd been a mess. Volatile, impossible to reach, working 18-hour days. I hung up that phone, Ilara said quietly, and I realized something. If I told you about the pregnancy, you would have come back. Not because you wanted to, but because you felt you should. Because that's who you are, Miles. Responsible, honorable, all those things. And that would have been wrong? His voice came out sharper than intended. Yes, the word was firm. Because our children deserved better than a father who came back out of obligation. They deserved better than growing up in a house where I always wondered if you resented being trapped. Where you wondered the same thing. Miles felt anger spark in his chest. So you made that decision for me. For all of us. I made the decision that let you be free. Alara's eyes were bright now, but her voice didn't waver. And it let me be free, too. Free from wondering if you were only there because of them. Free from trying to make myself smaller so you wouldn't feel obligated. That's not fair, isn't it? She leaned forward slightly. Tell me honestly, Miles. If I had called you that week, told you I was pregnant, what would you have done? He wanted to say he would have been thrilled, that he would have stepped up immediately, no hesitation. But Alara was watching him with those green eyes that had always seen through his carefully constructed walls, and he found he couldn't lie. I would have proposed, he said finally. Moved you into the penthouse, hired the best doctors, the best everything, and resented every minute of it. Her words were soft but certain. Not right away, maybe not even consciously, but eventually you would have looked at me and wondered what your life might have been if you'd had the choice. Miles wanted to argue, but the words stuck in his throat, because there was truth in what she said, and they both knew it. Julian started to cry, a real cry this time. Alara immediately lifted him out, settling him against her shoulder with a bottle from the diaper bag. The baby latched on, his cries subsiding to hiccups. Miles watched her handle 2 babies with the competence of someone who'd been doing it alone for over a year. How did you manage? He asked quietly. Financially. Twins. I sold my graphic design work. Took a job with a marketing firm that let me work from home. My mom moved in for the first 6 months. She shifted Julian. We're not living in luxury, but we're fine. They have my eyes, Miles said. Alara's expression softened. Julian does. Ivy's are more green. But yes. What do you tell people about their father? That he's not in the picture. No hesitation. The words hit harder than he expected. Not in the picture. As if he'd chosen this. As if he'd known. And walked away. Alara. He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. I deserve to know. Regardless of what I might have done or how I might have reacted. They're my children. I know. Her voice was barely a whisper. Believe me, Miles. I know. There were nights when I was up at 3 a.m. with both of them screaming. When I was so tired I could barely stand and I hated myself for not telling you. When Julian took his first steps and I had no one to share it with. When Ivy said, Mama, for the first time, and I realized she'd never say Dada. A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, but not before Miles saw. So why? He asked. If it was that hard, why keep the secret? Alara looked at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was raw with honesty. Because I loved you too much to trap you, and I loved them too much to let them be born into anything less than certainty. Outside, fireworks exploded. The countdown to midnight. People cheered, counting down. But in the cafe, Miles and Alara sat in silence. 2 years of secrets pressing down on them. What happens now? Miles finally asked. Alara settled Julian back into the stroller. I don't know. I've been preparing for this conversation for 17 months. Now that it's happening, I have no idea. Ivy began to fuss. As Alara lifted her, the baby's tiny hand reached out, and her eyes, unmistakably Miles's gray eyes, focused on him with curious intensity. Miles felt something crack in his chest. I want to be in their lives, he said. I want to know them. I want to be their father. Alara's expression was unreadable. It's not that simple. Why not? Because you can't just walk into their lives like a new piece of furniture. Her voice held an edge. They have a routine, a world that works. And I need to know that if you're in it, you're really in it. Not just when it's convenient. The accusation stung because it was grounded in their history. People change, he said quietly. Do they? Alara challenged. Or do they just make promises they can't keep? His phone buzzed. Then again, and again. 37 missed calls. 15 texts. The last from his COO. Investors are asking for you. Where the hell are you? Alara's eyes flicked to the phone, then back to his face. She didn't say anything, but she didn't need to. Miles turned the phone off completely and set it face down. I'm here, he said. Right now I'm choosing to be here. And tomorrow? Next week? I don't have all the answers, but I'm asking for the chance to try. Outside, the countdown reached 0. The new year arrived with noise and promise. Alara held their children and looked at Miles with eyes full of pain and hope. One chance, she said finally. But if you hurt them, if you walk away once they know who you are, I will never forgive you. She began gathering her things, gave him an address for tomorrow afternoon, and walked out into the new year with his children. Miles sat alone and felt the full weight of everything he'd lost, and the terrifying possibility of everything he might still destroy. Miles stood outside the brownstone in Park Slope, staring at the address Alara had texted, a modest building, well-maintained, sandwiched between similar structures. Through the window he could see warm light and a colorful rug. He'd been standing there for 10 minutes, a bag of expensive toys in one hand, frozen. Before he could overthink further, the door opened. Alara stood there in jeans and an oversized sweater, hair in a ponytail, no makeup. "Were you going to ring the bell? Or just stand there all afternoon?" "I was preparing." Miles held up the bag. "I brought things." Alara glanced at the bag and something softened. "Come in." The apartment was small but carefully arranged. Worn couch, bookshelves with novels and children's books, organized toy bins, clean but lived in. The walls held photos. Alara pregnant, the twins as newborns, their first birthday, a life he'd never been part of. "They're napping," Alara said. "Usually sleep another 30 minutes. Miles set the bag down. The apartment felt too small for him, as if his presence took up too much space. "Coffee?" Alara asked. "Sure." He watched as she moved through familiar motions, grinding beans, filling the French press. Everything spoke of efficiency born from necessity. "You can sit," she said. Miles lowered himself onto the couch. A board book lay open. "Goodnight Moon." He picked it up. "That's Julian's favorite," Alara said, bringing coffee. "We read it 3 times last night." "And Ivy?" "The very hungry caterpillar. She tries to poke her fingers through the holes." A smile crossed her face. "She's the curious one. Julian's cautious, likes routine." Miles absorbed this hungrily. His children had personalities he knew nothing about. Alara, crying, erupted from the hallway. Both twins, waking simultaneously. Alara was on her feet instantly. "They're up. Do you want to?" Miles stood. "Yes." The nursery barely fit 2 cribs, a changing table, and a rocking chair. But the walls were soft yellow, with a painted mural of trees and birds. The twins stood in their cribs, red-faced, hands gripping rails. Ivy saw Alara first. "Mama, Mama!" But Julian's eyes fixed on Miles. His face crumpled. Crying intensified. "Hey, it's okay," Alara soothed, lifting Ivy. She glanced at Miles. "He's not good with new people." Miles felt his chest tighten. His son was afraid of him. "Julian," Alara said gently. "This is Miles. He's going to visit today." Julian pressed against the crib's far side, whimpering. "Can I try?" Miles asked. Alara hesitated, then nodded. "Move slowly." Miles approached carefully and knelt to Julian's level. "Hey, Julian. I know I'm new. That's scary, huh?" Julian stared, hiccuping, fist clutching the rail. Miles didn't reach for him, just stayed there, letting Julian decide. After what felt like forever, Julian's grip loosened. He took a step forward, then another. His small hand reached out, fingers stretching toward Miles's face. Miles held still as tiny fingers touched his cheek, exploring. "Gentle," Alara coached softly. Julian patted Miles's cheek, then pulled back, surprised. But he was smiling now. Small, uncertain. Something cracked open in Miles's chest. This was his son. "Can I pick him up?" Miles asked. "Try. If he fusses, put him down." Miles reached in slowly. Julian watched, uncertain, but didn't pull away. When Miles lifted him, Julian remained rigid, then gradually relaxed. The weight was impossibly light, terrifyingly precious. Julian studied his face, then reached up and grabbed Miles's nose. "He does that," Alara said with a smile. "Very interested in noses." Miles laughed and Julian's eyes widened. Then the boy giggled, bright and infectious. Ivy started laughing too. For a moment, Miles felt home. But Julian suddenly cried, reaching for Alara. "Mama, Mama!" Miles handed him over, trying not to feel the rejection. "It's okay," Alara said. "It's a lot for him." She settled both twins on her hips, impossibly. "I need to give them lunch. You can stay if you want." "Can I help?" She gestured to the counter. "Cut more fruit in that container." Miles found himself cutting strawberries while his children ate lunch, babbling to Alara in their own language. She translated, "Julian wants grapes and Ivy's asking for water." Such an ordinary moment, and Miles had never felt more like an outsider. "How do you do this?" he asked. "All of it. Every day. Alone." Alara wiped Ivy's face. "You just do. Because they need you. But don't you need help?" "Of course." Her jaw tightened. "There are days I'm so tired I feel like I'm collapsing. but asking for help felt like admitting I'd made the wrong choice. She lifted Julian out. Miles, we were together 4 years. I watched you choose work over dinner, over weekends, over me. Every choice told me where I ranked. That wasn't about you. It was about not being vulnerable. You could control a business. You couldn't control a relationship. The words stung. He'd poured himself into work because it made sense, had clear results. I'm trying, he said quietly. I know, but trying isn't enough. She gestured to the twins. This is every single day. Early mornings. Sick days, tantrums, endless repetition. It's beautiful and brutal, and it never stops. Her eyes met his. I need to know if you're ready for all of it. Not just the good moments. His phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. Ilara's expression shuddered. You should get that, it might be important. Miles pulled out his phone. 7 missed calls. Text from his assistant. Emergency. Singapore deal falling apart. They need you on a call in 20 minutes. He stared at the screen, then at Ilara's back, at his children playing. This was the test. What was he willing to choose? The phone buzzed again. Miles, please. They're threatening to pull out. Julian looked up and smiled at Miles. Small, tentative. Miles turned off his phone. It can wait, he said. Ilara turned, surprise on her face. Miles, if it's work, it can wait. I'm here, and I'm staying. For the first time, her expression softened toward trust. Miles sat on the floor to play. Julian handed him a toy truck. Ivy climbed into his lap with a book. As they played, Miles felt his phone heavy in his pocket and wondered how many times he could make this choice before the cost became too high. 3 weeks had passed since New Year's Eve, and Miles had kept his word. Every day he showed up at the brownstone, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for the entire afternoon. He learned that Julian needed his stuffed elephant to nap, that Ivy refused to eat anything green unless it was mixed with applesauce, that both twins liked it when he read to them in his deep voice, even if they didn't understand half the words. He'd canceled meetings, rescheduled calls, and delegated more in 3 weeks than he had in 3 years. His COO had stopped looking surprised when Miles left the office at 5. His assistant had learned to block out family time on his calendar without being asked. The Singapore deal had fallen through. 2 potential investors had pulled out of a major project because Miles wasn't available for crucial meetings. His board of directors had called an emergency session to discuss his sudden change in priorities. Miles told them all the same thing. His priorities hadn't changed. They'd been corrected. But tonight, sitting in his penthouse at 11 p.m. with a glass of scotch he hadn't touched, staring at the financial reports spread across his coffee table, Miles felt the weight of every choice crushing down on him. His company was stable, successful, worth billions, but it was also used to having him available 24/7, used to him being the one who swooped in to save deals and smooth over problems. Without that constant presence, cracks were starting to show. The question he couldn't escape: how long could he maintain this balance before something broke? His phone rang. Ilara's name lit up the screen. She never called this late. Hello? Miles. Her voice was strained, shaky. I need help. He was on his feet instantly. What's wrong? Are the kids okay? They're sick. Both of them. High fevers. They won't stop crying. And Julian threw up twice. I called the pediatrician and she said to bring them to the ER if the fevers don't break, but I can't. Her voice cracked. I can't carry them both down the stairs and drive, and I don't have anyone else to call, and I'm coming right now, don't move. Miles was out the door before she could respond, not bothering with a coat, taking the stairs instead of waiting for the elevator. His driver had gone home hours ago, so he grabbed his own keys and drove himself, breaking every speed limit between Manhattan and Brooklyn. 20 minutes later, he burst through Ilara's door. She'd left it unlocked for him. The apartment was dim except for a lamp in the nursery, and he could hear crying before he even made it down the hall. Ilara sat in the rocking chair, Ivy limp and feverish in her arms, tears streaming down Ilara's face. Julian lay in his crib crying weakly, his face flushed red. Thank God, Ilara whispered when she saw him. His fever is 103. Hers is 102.5. I gave them medicine an hour ago, but it's not helping and I don't know what to do. We're going to the hospital, Miles said, already reaching for Julian. The little boy was burning up, his pajamas soaked with sweat. My car's downstairs. Can you carry Ivy? Ilara nodded, already moving. Miles had never seen her like this. Terrified, barely holding it together. She was always so capable, so in control. Seeing her fall apart made his own fear spike. They made it to the car, Ilara in the back with both car seats that Miles had insisted on buying 2 weeks ago. The twins cried weakly the entire drive, and Miles pushed the car faster, his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. "They're going to be okay," he said, not sure if he was reassuring Ilara or himself. "Kids get fevers. It's normal. Julian has never been this hot," Ilara said, her voice breaking. "And Ivy won't drink anything. What if they're dehydrated? What if—" "They're going to be okay," Miles repeated, more firmly this time. "We're almost there." The ER was chaos. Crying children, exhausted parents, antiseptic smell. Miles walked straight to registration with Julian burning up in his arms. "My son and daughter both have fevers over 102. They need to be seen immediately." Something in his expression made the nurse nod. "Let me get you back to triage." The next 3 hours blurred. Doctors, tests, monitors. Julian had an ear infection. Ivy had strep throat. Both severely dehydrated, needing IV fluids and antibiotics. Miles sat beside Julian's crib as a nurse inserted the IV. His son screamed, reaching for him. Miles held Julian's hand, murmuring reassurances. Ilara held Ivy through the same process, face buried in her daughter's hair. When both twins finally slept, Miles found Ilara in the chair between their beds, staring at nothing. "Hey," he said softly. "They're okay. Doctor said they'll be fine." Ilara nodded, hands trembling. "When's the last time you ate?" "I don't remember. I'll find the cafeteria. I'll bring something back." He paused. "Ilara, breathe. They're safe." When he returned with sandwiches and coffee, Ilara was crying silently. Miles knelt beside her. "Talk to me." "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. "I thought I could, but Miles, I'm so tired. Every day is a battle and I'm one person and there are two of them and I'm failing." "You're not failing. Look at them." Miles gestured to the sleeping twins. "They're healthy, happy kids because of you. They're in the hospital, with an ear infection and strep throat, because kids get sick, not because you did anything wrong." Miles took her hands. "You are the strongest person I know. But you don't have to do this alone anymore. I'm here." "For how long?" "Raw. How long before another Singapore deal comes along?" "I lost that deal," he said quietly. $50 million, because I wasn't available." Ilara's eyes widened. "Miles, and I'd lose it again 100 times over." He squeezed her hands. "Because I finally understand what matters. It's not boardrooms. It's sitting here at 2 a.m. making sure our kids are okay." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You say that now? I'm not perfect, I'll mess up, but I'm not going anywhere." He wiped her tears. "Not now. Not ever." She leaned forward, resting her head on his shoulder for the first time in almost 2 years. Miles wrapped his arms around her. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for not telling you. You deserve to know. And I'm sorry for giving you reasons to doubt me." They sat like that while their children slept peacefully nearby. Around 4 a.m., a nurse came in to check vitals. Julian's fever had broken. Ivy's was coming down. They could probably go home by morning. "You should try to sleep," Miles said to Ilara. "I'll stay up with them." "Miles, you don't have to." "I want to." He guided her to the small couch against the wall. "Lie down. I've got this." Ilara was too exhausted to argue. She curled up on the couch, and within minutes, she was asleep. Miles settled into the chair between his children's beds, watching them breathe, counting each rise and fall of their small chests. Julian's hand was curled around his stuffed elephant. Ivy had managed to kick off her blanket, and Miles carefully tucked it back around her. His phone buzzed. He'd forgotten about it completely. 3 missed calls from his assistant, 2 from his COO, 7 emails marked urgent. There was a time when those notifications would have sent him into immediate action mode, when he would have stepped into the hallway to take calls, juggling a crisis while his personal life waited. But that time was over. Miles silenced his phone and set it face down on the table beside him. Right now, the only thing that mattered was making sure his children got better. Everything else could wait. As dawn light began filtering through the hospital window, as Ilara slept fitfully on the couch and his children rested peacefully in their beds, Miles made a decision. He was going to step back from the company. Not entirely. He'd built it from nothing and he wasn't ready to walk away completely. But he needed to restructure, delegate more, trust his team to handle things without him always being available. It would mean less money, less control, less of the constant validation that came from being indispensable. But it would mean more mornings with his children, more evenings reading bedtime stories, more moments like this, where he got to be present for the hard parts and the beautiful parts and everything in between. The choice suddenly seemed simple. Around 7 a.m., Alara stirred. She checked on the twins, both cooler now, sleeping peacefully. "Thank you," Alara said, turning to face him. "For coming, for staying. You don't have to thank me, they're my children too. This is where I'm supposed to be." Alara studied him, and Miles saw the beginning of trust. Before either could speak, the door opened. A woman stood there, late 50s, well-dressed, sharp features, calculating eyes. Expensive handbag. "Miles," she said coolly, "your assistant told me I might find you here, though I didn't expect a pediatric ward." Miles felt his body go cold. "Mother, what are you doing here?" Margaret Harrington stepped in, gaze moving from Miles to Alara to the twins. Her expression didn't change, but Miles saw when she connected the pieces. "I see," she said quietly. "This is why you've been unavailable, why the board is concerned." She looked at Alara appraisingly. "And you are?" "Alara Moore," Alara said, lifting her chin despite exhaustion. "The mother of Miles's children." "Children, plural. Twins," Miles said, standing. "Julian and Ivy, your grandchildren. And when exactly were you planning to mention this development?" The temperature dropped. Miles knew that tone. Not anger, something worse. Business mode. "This isn't a board meeting, Mother. This is my personal life." "Your personal life affects the company, you know that." Margaret's eyes flickered to Alara. "How long has this been going on?" "We're not going on," Alara said. "We were together years ago. We separated. I raised the children alone. Miles only found out 3 weeks ago." Miles saw his mother's expression shift. Calculation. "I see," Margaret said. "And now? I'm getting to know my children, being the father they deserve, at the expense of the company you built. Not a question. If necessary, yes." Margaret's jaw tightened. "Miles, be reasonable. You have responsibilities." "I am being reasonable. For the first time, I'm choosing what actually matters." Julian stirred, making a sound. Alara was there immediately, checking temperature, smoothing hair. Margaret watched with unreadable eyes. "We'll discuss this later," she said finally. "When you're not distracted, there's nothing to discuss. I'm not changing my mind." His mother smiled. Thin, sharp. "We'll see." She left, heels clicking down the corridor. The silence felt oppressive. "That was your mother," Alara said quietly. "Yes. She's going to be a problem, isn't she?" Miles looked at his sleeping children, then at Alara's worried face, then at the door. "Probably," he admitted. But as he reached for Alara's hand, as he watched sunrise paint the room golden, Miles realized he was ready. His mother built her life around power. Miles was building his around family, and he wasn't backing down. The call came at 6 a.m., 2 days after the hospital incident. Miles was at Alara's apartment, having spent the night on her couch after the twins' bedtime, partly to help with night wake-ups, partly because leaving had felt impossible. He'd been sleeping better on her worn sofa than he had in months in his 1,000-thread-count sheets. His phone vibrated on the coffee table. His mother's name flashed across the screen. Miles stepped into the kitchen before answering, not wanting to wake anyone. "Mother, the board wants to meet with you. Today, 10 a.m. Margaret's voice was crisp, businesslike. "They have concerns about your recent performance and availability. I have plans today. Cancel them. This isn't optional, Miles. They're considering a vote of no confidence." The words hit like cold water. A vote of no confidence meant they could force him out of active leadership of the company he'd built from nothing. "They can't do that," Miles said. But even as he spoke, he knew they could. He'd set up the corporate structure that way himself, believing he'd never give them reason to use it. "They can and they will if you don't show them you're still committed to the company." Margaret paused. "Miles, I understand you've had a surprise, but you need to handle this situation before it damages everything you've worked for." "Situation?" Miles felt anger spike in his chest. "You mean my children? I mean the complications that have arisen." Her voice remained maddeningly neutral. "You're a businessman, Miles. Sometimes we have to make difficult choices for the greater good. What exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting you remember what's at stake. The company employs thousands of people. Your decisions affect all of them." Another pause, calculated. "There are ways to handle this that don't require you to sacrifice your career. Financial support for the children, of course. A trust fund. Perhaps an arrangement that allows you to be involved without disrupting your responsibilities." An arrangement. Miles's voice was dangerously quiet. You mean throwing money at them and pretending they don't exist. I mean being realistic about what you can actually provide. Miles, you're not equipped to be a full-time father. You never have been. You're a builder, a visionary. That's where your talents lie. I'm learning. At 42? When you've never changed a diaper in your life? Margaret's voice sharpened. Be honest with yourself. This woman managed perfectly well without you for nearly 2 years. She can continue to do so with proper financial support. You don't need to upend your entire life out of guilt. Miles gripped the phone tighter. This isn't about guilt, isn't it? You feel guilty for not being there, so you're overcompensating. But guilt isn't the same as genuine desire to be a father. And children can sense the difference. The words burrowed under his skin because there was a grain of truth in them. He was driven partly by guilt, by the knowledge that he'd missed so much already. But it wasn't just guilt. It couldn't be. The meeting is at 10, Margaret repeated. Don't be late. She hung up before he could respond. Miles stood in Ilara's tiny kitchen, watching dawn light creep through the window and felt the walls closing in. 3 weeks of choosing family over work, and already the consequences were threatening everything he'd built. How long have you been standing there? He turned to find Ilara in the doorway wearing an oversized t-shirt and pajama pants, her hair messy from sleep. She looked younger like this, vulnerable in a way she never allowed in daylight. I didn't want to wake you, Miles said. The walls are thin, I heard your phone. She moved to the coffee maker, starting the familiar morning routine. Your mother? The board wants to meet. They're concerned about my commitment to the company. Ilara's hand stilled on the coffee grounds. Because of us. Because I've been making different choices. Miles leaned against the counter. Choices that apparently make them nervous. You should go. Ilara. Miles, I'm serious. She turned to face him, her expression guarded. I never wanted you to sacrifice your career. That's the whole reason I didn't tell you in the first place. This isn't your fault. Then whose fault is it? Her voice rose slightly, and she glanced toward the hallway where the twins were sleeping, then lowered it again. You've been here every day for 3 weeks. You've missed meetings, canceled trips, turned down deals. Of course there are consequences. Consequences I'm willing to accept. Are you? Ilara crossed her arms. Or are you going to wake up 6 months from now and resent us for everything you gave up? Is that what you think of me? I think you're trying to be someone you're not sure you can be. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. And I think your mother is right about one thing. Guilt is a terrible foundation for parenthood. The words stung more because Ilara was the one saying them. I'm not here out of guilt, Miles said firmly. I'm here because I want to be. Because when Julian laughs at my terrible animal sounds or when Ivy falls asleep in my arms, I feel something I've never felt before. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. But for how long? Ilara's voice broke. How long before the company needs you more than we do? Before the life you're trying to build here feels like a cage instead of a choice? Miles moved toward her, but she stepped back. Go to your meeting, she said. Figure out what you actually want. Not what you think you should want or what makes you feel less guilty. What you actually want. Ilara, please. She wrapped her arms around herself. I can't do this again. I can't let myself believe you're staying and then watch you leave. The twins are getting attached to you. She stopped herself. Just go. We'll be fine. Miles wanted to argue, to pull her into his arms and promise everything would be okay. But the fear in her eyes stopped him, because she was right to be afraid. He'd proven once before that he wasn't reliable when it came to choosing love over ambition. I'll be back this afternoon, he said finally. After the meeting. We'll talk then. Ilara nodded but didn't meet his eyes. Miles changed in the bathroom. He'd started keeping spare clothes at the apartment, and left before the twins woke up. The drive to Manhattan felt longer than usual, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on him. At exactly 10 a.m., Miles walked into the boardroom of Harrington Architecture. 8 people sat around the polished table, the board of directors who'd helped him build this empire. His mother sat at the far end, her expression carefully neutral. Gentlemen, Margaret, Miles said, taking his seat at the head of the table. I understand you have concerns. Robert Chen, the CFO and longest-serving board member, spoke first. Miles, we've worked together for 15 years. I respect everything you've built here, but the last month has been concerning. Concerning how? You've missed 14 meetings. Another board member, Patricia Whitmore, said bluntly. Delegated 3 major client presentations. The Singapore deal fell through specifically because you weren't available for negotiations. I've been dealing with a personal situation. We understand that, Robert interrupted gently, and we're sympathetic. But Miles, this company has always worked because you were available, because clients knew they could count on you personally. Without that, we're just another architecture firm. Perhaps that's not such a bad thing, Miles said carefully. I've been considering restructuring anyway, promoting more people into leadership roles, distributing responsibilities. You're talking about stepping back. Margaret's voice cut through the room. After 15 years of being the face of this company, you want to become a passive investor. I'm talking about creating a sustainable model that doesn't require me to be available 24/7. Because of children you didn't know existed a month ago. Patricia's tone wasn't cruel, just matter of fact. Miles, I have 3 kids. I understand the pull of family, but I also understand that building a career requires sacrifice. We all make choices, and I'm making mine now, at the expense of everyone who depends on this company for their livelihoods, Margaret said. Thousands of employees, Miles. Hundreds of contractors. Clients who trusted us because they trusted you. The guilt she was wielding like a weapon landed exactly as intended. Because she wasn't wrong. His choices didn't just affect him. What exactly are you proposing? Miles asked. Robert exchanged glances with the other board members. We want assurance that you're committed to the company. A clear plan for how you'll balance your personal situation without impacting operations. And honestly, we need to see the Miles Harrington we've worked with for 15 years, not this distracted version. I'm not distracted. You left your own New Year's party without telling anyone, Margaret interjected smoothly. You've turned off your phone during business hours. You've made it clear that your new family takes priority over everything else. They should take priority, Miles said, heat entering his voice. They're my children. Then perhaps you need to decide, Patricia said quietly, whether you can be both the father they need and the CEO this company needs. Because right now, it seems like you're failing at both. The words hit harder than anything else that had been said, because there was truth in them. He wasn't fully present with the twins because he was always worried about work, and he wasn't effective at work because he was thinking about the life he was building in Brooklyn. What do you want from me? Miles asked. Margaret leaned forward. Recommit to the company. Full-time like before. We'll help you set up a generous support system for the children. Nannies, private schools, whatever they need. You can be involved, certainly, but on a schedule that doesn't interfere with your responsibilities here. You want me to be a part-time father. We want you to be realistic about your capabilities and priorities. Margaret's voice was gentle, almost kind. Miles, you're brilliant at what you do, but you've never been a family man. There's no shame in acknowledging that. Miles looked around the table at the faces of people he'd worked with for years. People who'd helped him build something extraordinary. They weren't being cruel. They were being practical, and they were asking him to choose. I need time to think, Miles said finally. The vote is scheduled for next week, Robert said. We need your answer by then. Miles stood, the weight of the decision crushing down on him. You'll have it. He left the boardroom and found himself in his office, the space he'd occupied for 15 years, with its view of the Manhattan skyline and walls covered in architectural awards, photos of buildings he'd designed, cities he'd helped reshape. His phone buzzed. A text from Alara. Twins are asking for you. Ivy keeps pointing at the door. Then another text, this one from his assistant. CNN wants to interview you about the Hudson Project. It's a huge opportunity. 2 worlds pulling him in opposite directions. Miles sank into his chair and pulled up his calendar. Meetings scheduled for the next 3 months. Site visits, client dinners, board presentations. The life he'd built, brick by brick, deal by deal. Then he pulled up his photos. The few dozen he'd managed to take over the past 3 weeks. Julian's first smile directed at him. Ivy covered in spaghetti sauce. Both twins asleep in his arms. A life he was just beginning to build, but one that already felt more real than anything in this office. His phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. Hello? Mr. Harrington, this is Amanda Reeves from the New York Times. The voice was crisp, professional. I'm writing a piece about corporate executives and work-life balance. I understand you recently discovered you're a father of twins. I'd love to get your perspective on how you're managing the transition. Miles felt his blood run cold. How did you know about that? Mr. Harrington, you're a public figure. When you start showing up in Brooklyn instead of boardrooms, people notice. A pause. I have sources who say your board is concerned about your commitment to the company. Care to comment? Someone had leaked the story. Miles didn't need to guess who. No comment, he said, and hung up. But the damage was done. By tomorrow, his personal life would be splashed across business pages. The board would have more ammunition. And Ilara would see that being with him meant living under scrutiny she'd never asked for. Miles looked out at the Manhattan skyline, then down at his phone with Ilara's text still glowing on the screen. 24 hours ago, he'd thought the choice was becoming clear. Now he realized it had never been more impossible. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Ilara. "Never mind. I shouldn't have asked. I know you're busy." The words felt like a door closing. Miles grabbed his coat and walked out of the office, ignoring his assistant's questions about his afternoon meetings. He drove back to Brooklyn through afternoon traffic, his mother's words echoing in his head. "You've never been a family man, there's no shame in acknowledging that." But what if she was wrong? What if he could be both? Or what if trying to be both meant failing at everything? He parked outside Ilara's building and sat in the car for 10 minutes, trying to find the words to explain what was happening, what he was facing. Finally, he walked up the stairs and knocked. Ilara opened the door, the twins playing behind her. Her eyes were red-rimmed, as if she'd been crying. "Miles," she said quietly, "we need to talk." The words every man dreads, but Miles heard something worse in her tone. Resignation. "I know," he said. "I need to tell you what's happening. I already know." She held up her phone, and Miles saw the headline, "Billionaire CEO's Secret Twins, Miles Harrington's Double Life." The story was already out, and from the look on Ilara's face, everything he'd been trying to build was about to come crashing down. Miles stood frozen in Ilara's doorway, staring at the headline on her phone screen. The article included photos. Him leaving her building, carrying Julian, a grainy shot that someone must have taken from across the street. "How did they?" he started. "Does it matter?" Ilara's voice was tight, controlled, too controlled. "Come in. I don't want the neighbors seeing this conversation." Miles stepped inside. The twins were playing with blocks on the living room floor, oblivious to the storm breaking around them. Ivy looked up and smiled when she saw him, reaching her arms up. "Dada," she said clearly. Miles felt his heart stop. It was the first time she'd called him that. "She started this morning," Ilara said, her voice cracking slightly. "Both of them. They've been asking for you all day." The joy Miles should have felt was crushed under the weight of everything else. He moved to pick up Ivy, but Ilara caught his arm. "Not yet," she said. "We need to talk first." She led him to the kitchen while the twins played, putting distance between them and the children. When she turned to face him, Miles saw something in her expression that terrified him. Resignation mixed with determination. "My phone has been ringing all morning," Ilara said quietly. "Reporters, people I haven't talked to in years suddenly wanting to check in. My landlord called to ask if there was going to be press outside the building. A photographer followed me to the grocery store." "Ilara, I'm so sorry." "This is what I was afraid of," she interrupted. "This is exactly why I didn't tell you. Because your life isn't private, Miles. Everything you touch becomes public. And I can't." Her voice broke. "I can't have my children growing up like that, with cameras following them, with strangers knowing their names, with every moment of their lives turned into a story. I'll fix this. I'll issue a statement, get lawyers involved." "You can't fix it." The words came out sharper than intended, and Ilara immediately glanced toward the living room, lowering her voice. "The story is out. People know. And now every decision we make, every moment we share with the twins will be watched and judged and photographed." Miles felt helpless, a sensation he'd rarely experienced in his life. "Tell me what you want me to do." Ilara wrapped her arms around herself. "I want you to be honest with me about what happened at that meeting today, about what they asked you to choose." Miles had never been good at lying, especially not to her. He told her everything. The board's concerns, his mother's manipulation, the ultimatum hanging over him, the vote scheduled for next week. When he finished, Ilara was quiet for a long moment. "Your mother leaked the story," she said finally. "You know that, right?" Miles had been trying not to think about it, but yes, he knew. "She wants to force my hand, make me choose between the company and you. And what are you going to choose?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of everything it meant. "I don't want to have to choose," Miles said. "I want both. I want to be there for you and the twins, and I want to keep the company I built." "Is that really impossible? For most people?" "Yes." Ilara's eyes were sad. "Miles, you're not a regular parent. You can't just show up at pickup time and help with homework. You're a public figure running a billion-dollar company. That requires a level of commitment that doesn't leave room for much else. So what? I just give up? Walk away from them? I'm saying you need to be realistic about what you can actually provide. Ilara moved to the window, staring out at the street. And I need to be realistic about what I can accept for them. Something in her tone made Miles's blood run cold. What does that mean? Ilara turned back to him, and Miles saw tears on her cheeks. It means maybe your mother was right. Maybe the best thing you can do for them is provide financial support and stay at a distance. Let them have a normal life without cameras and pressure and… Are you serious right now? Miles felt anger surge through him. You want me to be a checkbook? After everything? After these 3 weeks? After 3 weeks when you've been playing house? Ilara's voice rose again. But Miles, this isn't playing. This is their life. Every single day for the next 18 years and beyond. And I'm watching you struggle with just 3 weeks. What happens at 6 months? A year? 5 years? I'm struggling because I'm learning. Because this is new. It will always be hard. Ilara shot back. That's parenthood. It doesn't get easier, it just gets different. And I can't watch you resent them or me for the life you gave up. I'm not giving up anything I actually want. Then why haven't you told the board no? The question cut through everything else. Why haven't you walked in there and said, this is my choice, accept it or I'm out? Why are you still waiting, still considering, still treating this like a negotiation? Miles opened his mouth to respond and found he had no answer. Because she was right. Some part of him was still weighing options, still calculating costs and benefits, still treating his family like a business decision. That's what I thought, Ilara said softly. Miles, I don't blame you. I really don't. You've spent your entire adult life building that company. It's who you are. And asking you to walk away from that is like asking you to stop breathing. That's not true, isn't it? She moved closer, her eyes searching his. Be honest with me. If you could have both, if you could snap your fingers and have the company and the family without either one suffering, what would you choose? Both, Miles said immediately. I'd choose both, but you can't have both. Not really. Not in any meaningful way. Ilara wiped her eyes. And I can't keep watching you try to split yourself in half. It's not fair to you. And it's not fair to them. From the living room came the sound of Julian starting to fuss. Ilara immediately moved toward him, her maternal instincts overriding everything else. Miles followed, watching as she scooped Julian into her arms, checking his diaper, his temperature, running through the checklist that had become second nature to her. This was what he'd missed. Not just the big moments, but the 1,000 tiny acts of care that made up a parent's day. The automatic responses, the intuitive knowing, the bone-deep certainty about what to do. Could he ever develop that? Or would he always be a step behind, learning on the fly, dependent on Ilara to translate his children's needs? His phone rang. His mother's name flashed across the screen. Ilara saw it, and something closed off in her expression. You should take that. I don't want to. Miles, take the call. He stepped back into the kitchen, answering with barely controlled anger. What? I assume you've seen the news coverage? Margaret said calmly. It's better than expected, actually. Several outlets are playing it as a redemption story. Successful CEO discovers unknown children, steps up to take responsibility. It could work in your favor. You leaked the story to manipulate me. I ensured the narrative was controlled before someone else could control it first. No apology in her voice. The board is watching closely, Miles. How you handle this publicly will determine their vote. I don't care about their vote. Then you're being foolish. The company is your legacy. Everything you've worked for. Are you really willing to throw it away for a woman who kept your children's secret for 2 years? Miles felt rage boil in his chest. Don't talk about her like that. I'm being practical. She made her choices, Miles. She decided to handle this alone. She was managing just fine before you knew. Maybe the kindest thing you can do is let her continue. That's not your decision to make. No, it's yours, but make it wisely. Margaret paused. The board wants an answer by Friday. That gives you 3 days to decide who you're going to be. The man who built an empire, or the man who walked away from it for a ready-made family that was never part of his plan. She hung up before Miles could respond. When he returned to the living room, Ilara had both twins in her arms again, bouncing them gently. She looked exhausted, running on fumes and stubborn will. What did she say? Ilara asked. That I need to choose by Friday. Miles sat heavily on the couch. The board votes then. Ilara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. Miles, I'm going to make this easier for you. What do you mean? I mean, I'm asking you to step back. She wouldn't meet his eyes. Not forever, not completely, but I need you to go handle your business. Go to your meetings, save your company, do what you do best. And when the dust settles, if you still want to be involved in the twins' lives, we'll figure out an arrangement. Something structured and sustainable. An arrangement. Miles felt his chest tighten. You mean visiting rights, scheduled time, the exact thing you accused me of wanting earlier. I mean protecting all of us from a situation that's not working. Alara's eyes were bright with tears. Miles, I'm watching you tear yourself apart trying to be two people. And I'm watching my children start to depend on you without any guarantee you'll actually be able to stay. That's not fair to anyone. So you're ending this. I'm giving you space to figure out what you really want, without the pressure of us being here, needing things from you every day. Julian reached for Miles from Alara's arms, making grabby hands and saying, "Da-da," in his sweet, uncertain voice. Miles felt something crack inside his chest. He doesn't understand why you're saying this, Miles said roughly. Neither does Ivy. They're just starting to know me and you want me to disappear? I want you to be sure, Alara said, tears spilling over now. Because if you're not, if you come back and then leave again, it will destroy them. And it will destroy me too. The honesty in her words hit harder than any accusation. She wasn't being cruel. She was being protective, drawing boundaries to keep everyone safe, even if it was killing her to do it. Miles stood and moved toward them slowly. Alara watched him warily but didn't step back. He reached out and cupped her face gently, wiping tears away with his thumbs. What if I am sure? He said quietly. What if I already know exactly what I want? Then prove it, Alara whispered. Not with words, with choices. Show me, show them, that we're not just a phase you're going through, that when things get hard you won't disappear. How? How do I prove that? I don't know. She leaned into his touch for just a moment before pulling away. But Miles, I can't do this in-between thing. I can't have you here every day while you're mentally somewhere else calculating costs and benefits. Either you're all in or you're out. There's no middle ground when it comes to being a parent. The ultimatum she'd been avoiding finally laid bare. Miles looked at his children, really looked at them. Julian had fallen asleep against Alara's shoulder. Ivy was still awake, watching him with those gray eyes so like his own, her small face serious. She reached a hand toward him, and Miles took it, feeling her tiny fingers wrap around his thumb. Dada stay? Ivy asked, her vocabulary limited, but her meaning crystal clear. Miles felt the question pierce through every defense he had left. Yes, he said, not taking his eyes off her. Dada stays. He looked up at Alara. I don't need 3 days. I don't need to think about this anymore. The answer is you, all of you, always. Miles, I'm walking away from the company. The words came out clear, certain. Not from architecture. I'll always design, always create. But from running Harrington Architecture the way I have been. I'll transition leadership to the board, maintain a consulting role, but I'm done being the person who puts work above everything else. Ilara's eyes widened. You can't make that decision right now in the middle of... I'm not making it because of pressure. I'm making it because it's what I should have done years ago. Miles moved closer. You were right, back when we were together. I was using work to avoid being vulnerable, to avoid risking failure at something that mattered, but I'm not afraid anymore. You're not afraid because you haven't seen how hard this gets. Wait until Julian has a meltdown in the grocery store, or Ivy won't sleep for a week, or you have to cancel something important because one of them is sick. I've already done those things. Miles gestured to the past 3 weeks. And yes, it's hard. Yes, it's exhausting. But Alara, when Julian learned to say my name, I felt something I've never felt closing a deal. When Ivy falls asleep in my arms, I feel peace I've never found in any boardroom. This is hard, but it's real. And I'm done running from real. Alara stared at him, searching his face for doubt or hesitation. What about your mother? The board? Everything you've built? My mother will adjust or she won't. That's her choice. The board will vote however they vote. And everything I've built? Miles smiled sadly. It's just buildings, Alara. Just concrete and glass. It won't hold my hand when I'm old. It won't remember me with love. It's not real family. Miles, I need you to be absolutely certain. I am. He took her free hand, the one not supporting Julian. I'm more certain of this than anything I've ever done. And I know you're scared. I know I've given you reasons not to trust me. But I'm asking you to give me one more chance. Let me prove this isn't guilt or obligation. Let me prove that I choose this. Choose you. Choose them. With my whole heart. Ilara closed her eyes, fresh tears streaming down her face. If you're lying, if you change your mind, I won't. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Miles squeezed her hand. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not calculating the cost. I'm just choosing love. The word hung in the air between them. Love, unspoken for almost 2 years but never really gone. Ilara opened her eyes and looked at him. Really looked. Seeing past the expensive clothes and the CEO persona to the man underneath. The man who'd been too scared to be vulnerable before but was finally ready now. Okay, she whispered. Okay. But Miles, you have to call the board tonight. You have to make it official before you can change your mind. I need to know this is real. I'll call them right now. Miles pulled out his phone, but Ilara stopped him. After the twins are in bed, she said softly, let's have one normal evening first. Just us, being a family, before everything changes. Miles nodded, pocketing his phone. They spent the evening like any other family might. Dinner with the twins, spaghetti that ended up everywhere, bath time, during which Julian discovered splashing and Ivy decided to drink bathwater, bedtime stories, 3 books each, no negotiations, and finally settling both children in their cribs. Miles read Goodnight Moon to Julian while Ilara read The Very Hungry Caterpillar to Ivy. Then they switched, each parent kissing each child goodnight. As they walked out of the nursery together, leaving the door cracked open, Ilara reached for Miles's hand. They stood in the hallway, hands intertwined, and Miles felt something settle in his chest. This was right. This was home. Make the call, Ilara said quietly. I'll be here. Miles pulled up his phone and dialed his mother's number. She answered on the first ring. Miles, have you come to your senses? Actually, yes. Miles looked at Ilara as he spoke. I'm stepping down as CEO. Effective immediately. I'll stay on the board and maintain a consulting role, but I'm done with day-to-day operations. Silence on the other end. Then, Miles, don't be rash. I'm not being rash. I'm being clear. This is my decision, and it's final. Call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. I'll submit my resignation in writing tonight. You're throwing away everything? No, Mother. For the first time, I'm actually building something that matters. Whether you choose to be part of it is up to you. He hung up before she could respond and immediately dialed Robert Chen. Robert, it's Miles. I need you to call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Miles, if this is about the ultimatum, we can discuss. I'm resigning as CEO. I'll stay on the board and continue consulting on key projects, but I'm stepping back from active leadership. I'll recommend you and Patricia for co-interim CEOs while you search for my replacement. Robert was quiet for a long moment. Are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. Well, Robert's voice held surprise but also respect. Then I wish you the best, Miles. Truly, you've built something extraordinary. I hope whatever you're choosing instead is worth it. Miles looked at Ilara, at the nursery door behind her where his children slept. It is, he said. Trust me, it is. After hanging up, Miles felt lighter than he had in years. No more divided loyalties. No more impossible choices. Just a clear path forward even if he wasn't sure exactly where it led. Ilara was watching him with an unreadable expression. That's it then, she said softly. You really did it. I really did it. Miles pulled her close, and for the first time she let herself lean into him completely. No taking it back now. She laughed shakily against his chest. No taking it back. They stood like that for a long moment. Two people who'd loved and lost and were tentatively finding their way back to each other, while in the next room their children slept peacefully. What happens now? Ilara asked. Now? Miles pressed a kiss to her hair. Now we figure it out. Together. And for the first time in 2 years, that answer felt like enough. The news broke at 6 a.m. Miles woke on Ilara's couch. He'd stayed the night again, unable to leave after the calls he'd made, to his phone vibrating nonstop. 53 notifications, 29 missed calls. The headline on every business site was some variation of the same story. Miles Harrington steps down as CEO of Harrington Architecture, secret family behind shocking decision. But it was the quotes that made his blood run cold. Mr. Harrington has chosen to prioritize personal matters over his professional responsibilities, his mother had told the press. While we respect his decision, it raises questions about judgment and stability that the board must address. She'd made it sound like he was having a breakdown. like the decision was impulsive rather than deliberate. Miles sat up, running his hands through his hair. The apartment was still dark, the twins not yet awake. Alara's bedroom door was closed. His phone buzzed again. A text from Robert Chen. Board meeting moved to 8 a.m. Margaret is pushing for a full buyout of your shares. Call me. Before Miles could respond, another text came through. This one from an unknown number. Mr. Harrington, this is Kent Morrison from the Wall Street Journal. I'd like to discuss reports that your resignation is connected to a paternity scandal. Are the children in question? Miles deleted it without reading further. The bedroom door opened, and Alara emerged in pajamas, her hair a mess, eyes still heavy with sleep. She took one look at his face and immediately knew something was wrong. What happened? Miles held up his phone. My mother happened. Alara sat beside him on the couch, reading through the articles with growing horror. She's making it sound like you're unstable, like this was a mental health crisis. Because if I'm having a breakdown, the board can justify forcing me out completely, taking my shares, my voting rights, everything. Miles felt rage building in his chest. She'd rather destroy what I built than let me walk away on my own terms. Can she do that? If the board agrees I'm not mentally competent to make major decisions, yes. It's a clause I put in myself, ironically, to protect against hostile takeovers. Miles laughed bitterly. I never thought I'd need protection from my own mother. Alara was quiet for a moment, then, what do you need? The question surprised him. Not what are you going to do, or I told you this would be complicated. Just, what do you need? I need to get ahead of this story, Miles said. Issue my own statement, make it clear this was my choice, not a breakdown. Then do it. Now before the board meeting. Miles looked at her. You're not going to tell me I should have expected this? That this is exactly the mess you were trying to avoid? This is your mother being vindictive, Alara said firmly. That's not your fault, and it doesn't change what you decided last night. She reached for his hand. Unless you're having second thoughts? No. The answer came without hesitation. I meant every word I said. Then fight back. Not because you want the company, but because you deserve to leave it with dignity. Miles squeezed her hand gratefully, then pulled up his laptop. 20 minutes later, he'd drafted a statement and sent it to every major business publication. After 15 years of building Harrington architecture, I've made the decision to step back from active leadership to focus on what matters most. My family. This choice comes from a place of clarity and purpose, not crisis. I'm proud of what we've built and confident in the team that will carry it forward. As for my personal life, I ask for privacy as my children and their mother navigate this transition. Simple, direct. His own words, not filtered through his mother's narrative. He hit send just as crying erupted from the nursery. Both twins, waking up simultaneously as they often did. Alara started to rise, but Miles stopped her. I've got it. You make coffee. I'll handle the morning routine. She looked at him for a moment, then nodded. Ivy needs her diaper changed first, or she gets a rash. Julian will want his elephant before anything else. Miles absorbed the information and headed to the nursery. Julian was standing in his crib, tears streaming down his face, reaching for his stuffed elephant that had fallen to the floor. Ivy was sitting up, her face red with indignation at being awake. Hey, Miles said softly, scooping up the elephant and handing it to Julian. Here you go, buddy, I've got you. Julian clutched the elephant and immediately stopped crying, though he still hiccuped slightly. Miles lifted him out of the crib, then grabbed Ivy with his other arm. A maneuver that had seemed impossible 3 weeks ago but now felt almost natural. Morning, sweetheart, he said to Ivy, who was studying his face seriously. Ready to start the day? Ivy reached for his nose, grabbing it firmly. Dada. Something in Miles's chest expanded every time one of them said that word, like his heart was learning to hold more love than he'd known was possible. He managed to change both diapers, only getting kicked once by Ivy, which he considered a victory, and carry them both to the kitchen, where Alara had coffee brewing and was pulling out breakfast supplies. You're getting good at that, she observed, watching him settle both twins into their high chairs. I had a good teacher. Miles poured himself coffee, then started cutting up bananas the way Alara had shown him. Small pieces, nothing they can choke on. They moved through the morning routine together, feeding the twins, cleaning up the inevitable mess, wiping faces and hands, changing them into day clothes. It was so ordinary, so domestic, and yet Miles found himself more present than he'd been in any board meeting. His phone kept buzzing with calls and messages, but he ignored it. Right now, Julian needed help with his sippy cup, and Ivy was trying to climb out of her high chair. The rest could wait. Around 8:30, after the twins were settled playing with blocks, Miles finally checked his phone. 47 missed calls. Robert had texted, "Board meeting is a disaster. Your mother is pushing hard. Where are you?" Miles called him back, stepping into Alara's bedroom for privacy. "Miles, thank God," Robert said immediately. "The board is split. Half of them support your decision. Half think Margaret's right that this is impulsive. We need you here to defend yourself. I sent out a statement, which your mother is calling damage control from someone who's not thinking clearly." Robert's voice held frustration. "Miles, she's got ammunition. The Singapore deal, the missed meetings, the fact that you've known about these kids for less than a month and you're already restructuring your entire life. She's making a compelling case that you're not in a position to make rational decisions." Miles felt his jaw tighten. "What does she want?" "Full buyout of your shares at current market value. You'd walk away with about $2 billion in consulting rights, but no voting power, no board seat, no real say in the company's direction. Essentially cutting me out completely." "Yes." Miles was quiet for a moment, thinking. $2 billion was more money than most people could imagine. He could live comfortably forever, provide for his children, never work another day in his life, but it also meant watching his mother take over everything he'd built, watching her reshape it in her image, erase his influence, prove that he was replaceable. "What do you think I should do?" Miles asked. Robert sighed. "Honestly, I think you should take the buyout. Not because I agree with Margaret, but because this fight is going to get ugly. She's prepared to drag your personal life through the media, question your fitness as a parent, make this as painful as possible. Is it really worth it?" Miles looked through the doorway at Alara playing with the twins on the living room floor. Julian was showing her a block tower he'd built, and she was praising him like it was the Taj Mahal. Ivy was attempting to knock it down, laughing when the block scattered. This was his life now. These moments. This family. Did he really want to spend the next months or years fighting his mother in court, in the press, in boardrooms, exposing Alara and the twins to more scrutiny and judgment? "Tell them I'll take the buyout," Miles said quietly. "But I want it in writing that the transition is presented as my choice, not the board forcing me out. And I want a confidentiality agreement that protects my family from further media exposure." "Miles, are you sure?" "Yes. End this today, Robert. I'm done fighting." After he hung up, Miles sat on the edge of Alara's bed for a moment, processing what he'd just agreed to. He'd built Harrington architecture from a one-room office and a single contract. 15 years of his life poured into making it one of the most respected firms in the country, and he'd just signed it away in a 5-minute phone call. But when he walked back into the living room and saw Ivy toddle over to him on unsteady legs, arms reaching up saying, "Dada up," when he lifted her and felt her small body relax against his chest, Miles knew he'd made the right choice. "Everything okay?" Alara asked, her eyes worried. "Everything's fine." Miles sat on the floor with Ivy in his lap. Julian immediately crawled over, wanting to be included. "I took the buyout. I'm officially out of the company by end of business today." Alara's eyes widened. "Miles, that's huge. Are you okay? Honestly?" Miles looked at the children, then at her. "I'm relieved. It's done. No more fighting, no more divided loyalties. Just this. Just this," Alara echoed softly. "2 kids who still wake up at 5 a.m. in a 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. Sounds perfect to me." Julian chose that moment to sneeze directly in Miles's face, and Ivy started crying because she'd dropped her toy. Miles found himself simultaneously wiping his face, comforting Ivy, and trying to find the missing toy, a level of multitasking that would have seemed impossible a month ago. Alara laughed, really laughed for the first time since New Year's Eve. "You sure about that perfect assessment?" Miles grinned at her over the chaos. "Positive." The rest of the day passed in a blur of normalcy. Lunch, nap time, a walk to the park where the twins played on the swings, and Miles pushed them gently, his expensive wool coat getting covered in playground dirt. Other parents smiled at them. Just another family enjoying a sunny January afternoon. By the time they got back to the apartment, Miles had received the buyout papers via email. $2 billion transferred within 30 days. His name would remain on the company as founding architect, but he had no operational control. He signed them without hesitation and sent them back. That evening, after the twins were in bed, Miles and Alara sat together on the couch with glasses of wine, a luxury Alara admitted she rarely allowed herself. "So," she said quietly, "you're really done. No company, no CEO title, no empire to run. No company, no CEO title, no empire. Miles confirmed. He felt lighter saying it out loud. Just an unemployed billionaire with no idea what he's doing with his life. What do you want to do? The question was simple, but Miles realized no one had asked him that in years. It had always been about what he should do, what the company needed, what would generate the most profit. I want to design again, he said slowly. Not skyscrapers and corporate buildings, maybe houses, spaces where families actually live. I want to learn how to be a good father. He looked at Alara, really looked at her. I want to see if we could try again, for real this time. Not just as co-parents, but as us. Alara's breath caught. Miles, I know I'm asking a lot. I know I hurt you before and I know I have to earn your trust back. But Alara, these past few weeks being around you again, it reminded me why I fell in love with you in the first place. He reached for her hand. You're brilliant and fierce and you've built something incredible with these kids and I want to be part of it. Not just with them, but with you. Alara's eyes were bright with tears. I'm scared. Me too. What if it doesn't work? What if we try and fail and the kids get hurt in the crossfire? Then we'll have tried, Miles said gently. And we'll handle it like adults who love their children more than they fear failure. But Alara, what if it does work? What if we're actually better now than we were before? What if everything that happened, the separation, the twins, all of it, what if it made us into people who could actually make this work? Alara was quiet for a long moment, studying their intertwined hands. I never stopped loving you, she finally whispered. Even when I was furious with you, even when I convinced myself I was better off alone, I never stopped. Miles felt something unlock in his chest. I never stopped either. But love wasn't enough last time. No, but maybe we are enough now. Miles lifted her hand, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Maybe we're finally ready to choose each other. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but consistently, every day, even when it's hard. Alara looked at him for a long moment, and Miles saw the exact moment she made her decision. Saw the fear and hope war in her eyes. Saw her choose courage over self-protection. Okay, she said. We can try. But Miles, I need you to understand. I'm a package deal now. The kids come first always. And if at any point this gets messy or confusing for them, we pull back. Their stability matters more than our relationship. Agreed. And we go slow. No moving in together immediately. No rushing into making big declarations. We date. We figure out if this actually works in real life, not just in theory. Dating the mother of my children, Miles said, a smile tugging at his lips. That's a new one. Welcome to modern romance. Alara smiled back, but it was tentative, fragile. I'm serious, though. We take this one day at a time. One day at a time, Miles repeated. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he kissed her softly. The first kiss in over 2 years. It felt like coming home and starting something new all at the same time. When they pulled apart, Alara rested her forehead against his. What have we gotten ourselves into? No idea, Miles admitted. But I'm looking forward to finding out. They sat together on the couch, talking quietly about logistics and boundaries and what this new version of them might look like. It wasn't dramatic or passionate. It was practical and honest and real. Around 11, Miles's phone buzzed. A news alert. Margaret Harrington, named interim CEO of Harrington Architecture. He showed it to Alara, who winced. How does that feel? Miles thought about it. A month ago, it would have destroyed him. But now, like someone else's problem, he said honestly. Let her have it. I've got something better. As if on cue, crying erupted from the nursery. Ivy, having a nightmare. Alara started to get up, but Miles stopped her. I'll go. Finish your wine. He walked to the nursery and found Ivy standing in her crib, tears streaming down her face, reaching for him. Miles lifted her out, settling her against his chest, rubbing her back in small circles. Shh, baby girl. Dada's here. You're safe. Ivy's cries gradually subsided to hiccups, then to heavy breathing, as she relaxed against him. Miles sat in the rocking chair, holding his daughter, and thought about all the nights like this he'd missed, all the moments of comfort and connection he'd given up chasing success. But he was here now, and he wasn't going anywhere. When Ivy was fully asleep again, Miles laid her gently back in her crib, making sure her favorite blanket was within reach. He checked on Julian too, adjusting his elephant and pulling his covers up. When he came back to the living room, Ilara was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "What?" he asked. "You're really good at that now," she said softly. "The dad thing. I have a good teacher," Miles repeated, sitting back down beside her. "And a strong motivation to get it right." Ilara leaned against his shoulder and they sat in comfortable silence, the apartment quiet except for the distant sounds of the city. "Miles?" Ilara said after a while. "Yeah? Thank you. For choosing us. For real this time." Miles pressed a kiss to her hair. "Thank you for giving me the chance." Outside, the city continued its endless motion. Deals being made, empires being built, lives being lived at breakneck speed. But inside Ilara's small Brooklyn apartment, time moved differently. Slower, richer, full of the small, beautiful moments that actually mattered. And for the first time in his adult life, Miles Harrington was exactly where he belonged. 3 months had passed since Miles signed away his company. He'd expected regret, expected to wake up one morning and feel the loss of everything he'd built crushing down on him, expected to resent the choice he'd made. Instead, he woke up each morning to the sound of tiny feet running down the hallway, twin voices shouting, "Dada, Dada!" before launching themselves onto whatever surface he was sleeping on, sometimes Ilara's couch, increasingly often her bed, though they were still taking things slow. This particular morning, Miles woke to Julian sitting on his chest, examining his face with intense concentration, while Ivy was attempting to braid his hair with her small, clumsy fingers. "Good morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Dada awake?" Julian announced proudly, as if he'd accomplished something remarkable. "Yes, I'm awake." Miles glanced at the clock. 6:15 a.m., and it's very early. "Pancakes," Ivy declared. She'd recently learned this word and used it to describe any breakfast food. "Pancakes it is." He carried both twins to the kitchen, where Ilara was already making coffee, dressed in scrubs. She'd picked up extra shifts at the marketing firm lately, working on a major campaign that required long hours. "You don't have to make breakfast," she said, kissing his cheek in passing. "I can grab them something quick. I've got it. You're already running late." Miles had learned her schedule by heart. Which days she worked from home, which days she had to be in the office, which afternoons she had meetings that couldn't be interrupted. Ilara looked at him gratefully. "The meeting might run over. Can you handle pickup from daycare?" "Already on my calendar." Miles had gotten the twins into a small, highly rated daycare 3 mornings a week, partially to give them socialization, partially to give Ilara breaks she'd never allowed herself before. After Ilara left, Miles made actual pancakes. He'd learned to cook over the past months, another skill he'd never needed before, and settled the twins in their high chairs. Julian ate methodically, one piece at a time. Ivy smashed hers into abstract art before consuming any of it. "You're very creative," Miles told her seriously as she painted the tray with syrup. Ivy beamed at him. "Pretty?" His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Mr. Harrington, this is Bennett Cole from Architectural Digest. We're doing a feature on architects who've stepped away from corporate work to focus on residential design. Would you be interested in an interview?" Miles stared at the message. He'd quietly started taking on small residential projects. A renovation here, a custom home there. Nothing like the skyscrapers he'd designed before, but work that felt more meaningful. Families would live in these spaces, make memories in them. He replied, "Potentially. Send me details." After breakfast, Miles cleaned up, a task that now included wiping syrup off walls, floor, twins, and somehow the ceiling, and got both kids dressed. Julian wanted to wear his dinosaur shirt. Ivy insisted on a tutu over her leggings. Miles had learned not to fight these battles. Daycare drop-off went smoothly, though Julian clung a bit longer than usual at goodbye. "Dada come back?" "Always," Miles promised, kneeling to Julian's level. "I'll be here to pick you up after lunch." "Promise?" Something in Miles's chest tightened. Julian asked this every time now, as if he still couldn't quite believe Miles wouldn't disappear. "I promise, buddy. Cross my heart." Julian seemed satisfied with this, giving Miles a sticky kiss on the cheek before running off to join the other kids. With 3 hours of freedom, Miles headed to a coffee shop in Park Slope, where he'd been meeting with his new clients, a young couple expecting their first child, wanting to renovate a brownstone. But when he arrived, someone else was already sitting at his usual table, his mother. Miles froze in the doorway. They hadn't spoken since the buyout. He'd ignored her calls, deleted her emails, made it clear through lawyers that he wanted no contact. "Miles," Margaret said calmly, as if they'd had lunch together yesterday. "Sit down. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you." "Then listen." Her voice held steel underneath the pleasant tone. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Against his better judgment, Miles sat. But he didn't order coffee, didn't settle in. This wasn't a conversation. It was an ambush. "The company is struggling," Margaret said without preamble. "Since you left, we've lost 3 major clients. The Singapore group went with a competitor. 2 of our best architects quit to start their own firm. That's not my problem anymore." "Isn't it? You built Harrington Architecture, don't you care what happens to it?" Miles felt the manipulation clearly now. This was her strategy, appeal to his ego, his sense of responsibility, his attachment to what he'd created. "I care," he said evenly. "But I also know that companies evolve. New leadership means new direction, you'll figure it out." Margaret's jaw tightened. "We need you back, Miles. Not full-time, but as a consultant. Your name, your vision, your client relationships. The board is willing to offer—" "No, you haven't heard the offer." "I don't need to." Miles leaned forward. "I'm done, Mother. I've built a different life now, and I'm not sacrificing it for the company. Not for any amount of money or prestige or guilt you try to leverage. This is about that woman and those children." Margaret's carefully neutral mask slipped slightly. "You've known them for 3 months, Miles. 3 months, and you've thrown away 15 years of work." "I've known my children for 3 months. I've loved their mother for 6 years. Miles stood. "And I'm not throwing anything away. I'm choosing what actually matters. You're being naive. This domestic fantasy you're living, it won't last. Eventually you'll wake up and realize you've traded an empire for playing house with someone who kept your children's secret from you." The accusation hung in the air, designed to plant doubt, to poison what he was building with Alara. "She kept them secret to protect them," Miles said quietly. "From exactly this kind of toxicity. And honestly, I don't blame her." He walked out before his mother could respond, his hands shaking with suppressed anger. In the car, he sat for a moment, breathing deeply, reminding himself that she was wrong, that this life he'd chosen was real and good and worth every sacrifice. His phone rang. Alara's name. "Hey," he answered, forcing brightness into his voice. "Miss me already?" "Miles, I need you to come to my office." Her voice was tight. "Wrong. Now. Please." Fear spiked through him. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "Just come. I'll explain when you get here." 20 minutes later, Miles walked into the sleek Manhattan offices of Alara's marketing firm. The receptionist directed him to a conference room, where Alara sat with 2 people he didn't recognize, a man and woman both in expensive suits. "Miles, this is David and Jennifer Reeves." Alara's voice was eerily calm, but her hands were clenched in her lap. "They're attorneys." "Attorneys?" Miles looked between them, confused. "What's going on?" "Perhaps we should speak privately," David started, but Alara cut him off. "No. Miles needs to hear this." She looked at him, and Miles saw fear in her eyes. "They're here because someone filed a report with Child Protective Services, claiming that the twins are being endangered by having an unstable parent in their lives." The words didn't make sense at first. Miles just stared at her. "What?" "Someone, we don't know who yet, claimed that you've been exhibiting erratic behavior, that you're going through a mental health crisis, that allowing you unsupervised access to the children puts them at risk." Miles felt the ground shift under his feet. "That's insane. Who would—" But even as he asked, he knew. His mother. "CPS is required to investigate," Jennifer explained. "They'll be interviewing both of you, observing interactions with the children, checking the home environment. It's standard procedure when a report is filed." "This is retaliation," Miles said, anger flooding through him. "My mother is doing this because I won't come back to the company. If that's true, we'll prove it," David said. "But in the meantime, you need to be very careful. No outbursts, no confrontations. Everything you do will be scrutinized." Alara stood abruptly. "Can you give us a minute?" The attorneys left, and Alara turned to Miles with tears streaming down her face. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," she said. "This is why I didn't tell you in the first place. Because your life is complicated and public, and now my children, our children, are being investigated because someone wants to hurt you." "Alara, I'm so sorry. I know it's not your fault. I know your mother is the one doing this. But Miles, they're going to come into my home, question how I parent, judge every choice I've made. And if they decide you're actually unstable, they could remove the twins. Do you understand that? They could take my babies away. Miles pulled her into his arms, feeling her shake with fear and fury. That won't happen. We'll prove this is malicious. We'll show them that the twins are healthy and safe and loved. Will we? Ilara pulled back, looking up at him. Because your mother clearly has resources and connections and a story about you having a breakdown. What do we have? The truth. And each other. Ilara laughed bitterly. The truth is you quit your job after finding out about secret children, and I'm a single mother who kept those children from their father for 2 years. We don't look great on paper, Miles. Then we make sure they see more than paper. They'll meet the twins, see how happy they are, they'll see us together, see that we're building something stable and healthy. And if that's not enough, Ilara's voice broke. If they decide Julian and Ivy would be better off in foster care while this is investigated, what then? Miles had no answer, because she was right to be terrified. CPS investigations could go wrong even when parents did everything right. And with his mother actively working against them, feeding false information, creating doubt. We fight, he said finally. Whatever it takes, we fight. Ilara nodded, wiping her tears. I need to pick up the twins early from daycare. The investigators want to observe them at home this afternoon. I'll come with you. Miles, maybe you shouldn't. I'm coming, he said firmly. I'm not hiding from this. If they want to investigate whether I'm fit to be in my children's lives, they can do it while I'm actively being their father. They drove to the daycare in tense silence, both lost in their own fears. When they arrived, the twins ran to them with uncomplicated joy, oblivious to the storm gathering around them. Dada, Mama! Julian showed them a painting he'd made, mostly handprints in primary colors. Look, it's beautiful, Miles said, kneeling to admire it properly. Should we hang it on the fridge? Yes. Julian's face lit up. Back at the apartment, Ilara tried to tidy up, but Miles stopped her. Let them see how we actually live. Trying to make it perfect will just make it look staged. So when the CPS investigator arrived, a woman named Lisa Torres with kind eyes and a notepad, she found a normal Brooklyn apartment with toys scattered on the floor, children's artwork on the walls, and 2 parents who were clearly exhausted but devoted. Lisa spent 3 hours with them. She watched Miles read to the twins, observed Ilara managing dinner prep while keeping both children entertained, asked questions about their routine, their medical care, their development. Mr. Harrington, Lisa said at one point, I understand you recently left your position as CEO of a major architecture firm. Can you tell me about that decision? Miles chose his words carefully. I discovered I had children I didn't know existed. That changed my priorities. I wanted to be present in their lives, which meant stepping back from work that required constant travel and availability. Some might say that's an extreme reaction to finding out about children you'd only just met. Some might, Miles agreed. But I'd say it's the only reasonable reaction. They're my kids. They deserve to have a father who chose them, not one who fit them in around his schedule. Lisa made notes, her expression neutral. And the relationship between you and Ms. Moore, how would you characterize it? Ilara answered this time. We're co-parenting, building a relationship, taking things slowly for the sake of the children. You were involved romantically in the past? Yes. We separated before I knew I was pregnant. Miles only found out about the twins on New Year's Eve. Why didn't you tell him sooner? The question hung in the air. Ilara glanced at Miles, then back at Lisa. Because I was afraid, she said honestly. Afraid he'd come back out of obligation rather than genuine desire. Afraid his complicated public life would disrupt the stable environment I was trying to create. Afraid of exactly this. People using my children as leverage in adult conflicts. Lisa's expression softened slightly. You understand that keeping a father from his children is serious? I do, and I'm not proud of that choice. But I made it believing it was best for them at the time. I was wrong. Miles has proven he's committed to being their father, and I'm grateful for that. After Lisa left, promising to file her report within a week, Miles and Ilara collapsed on the couch while the twins played quietly. How bad was that? Ilara asked. I don't know, Miles admitted. She seemed fair, but who knows what my mother has told them, what documentation she's provided. Ilara's phone buzzed. She looked at it and went pale. What? It's a message from someone at work. There's a photographer outside my building. They're asking employees about me, about the twins, about you. She looked up at Miles, fear stark in her eyes. This is going to get worse before it gets better, isn't it? Miles pulled her close. Probably, but we'll get through it. I'm scared, Miles. Not just for the CPS investigation. I'm scared of what your mother might do next, of what other ways she might try to hurt us to get to you. Then we need to be smarter than her, more prepared. An idea was forming in Miles's mind. What if we didn't wait for her next move? What if we went public ourselves? What do you mean? I mean we control the narrative, do an interview, tell our story, show people that we're not some scandal or crisis. We're just a family trying to make things work. Ilara considered this. That feels risky. More exposure, more scrutiny. Or it removes her power. She's counting on us hiding, on being ashamed or defensive. What if we're neither? Before Ilara could respond, Julian toddled over, climbing into Miles's lap. Dada sad? Miles looked down at his son's worried face and felt something settle in his chest. This little boy, who'd known him for only 3 months, could already read his emotions, cared when he was upset. That was real. That mattered more than any investigation or media story. Not sad, buddy, Miles said, kissing the top of Julian's head. Just thinking. But I'm okay now. Ivy came over too, not wanting to be left out, and suddenly both twins were piled in their parents' laps, the 4 of them tangled together on the worn couch. We're going to be okay, Ilara said quietly, and Miles wasn't sure if she was talking to him or to herself. Whatever happens, we're going to protect them. Always, Miles agreed. That night after the twins were asleep, Miles made a call. Bennett Cole, this is Miles Harrington. About that interview for Architectural Digest? I'm interested. But I want to talk about more than just architecture. I want to talk about family, about choices, about what really matters when you strip away all the prestige and success. Bennett was quiet for a moment. That's not what I expected. But yes, absolutely. When can we meet? Tomorrow. And Bennett? I want full editorial control over anything about my children. Their safety is non-negotiable. Understood. I'll send over the terms. Miles hung up and found Ilara watching him from the bedroom doorway. You're really doing this, she said. We're really doing this, he corrected. Together, if you're willing. Ilara was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but Miles, if this backfires, if it makes things worse for the twins, then we pull back immediately. Their well-being comes first. Always. She moved to stand in front of him, placing her hands on his chest. I'm trusting you. With everything. Don't make me regret it. I won't, Miles promised. Not again. She kissed him then, deep and certain, and Miles felt the shift between them. They weren't just co-parents anymore, weren't just tentatively dating. They were partners, united against whatever came next. And whatever came next, they would face it together. Even if that meant going to war with one of the most powerful women in New York. Even if that meant putting their private life on display. Even if that meant risking everything they'd built. Because some things were worth fighting for. And Miles Harrington had finally figured out exactly what those things were. The Architectural Digest photographer positioned Miles and Ilara on the couch in her living room. The same couch where they'd had their first real conversation 3 months ago. Where they'd fought and reconciled and slowly rebuilt trust. Natural, the photographer coached. Just be yourselves. Miles glanced at Ilara, who looked nervous despite her calm exterior. She'd dressed carefully, not too casual, not too formal. Just a woman in her own home. The twins played nearby with blocks, supervised by a production assistant who'd promised to keep them out of frame unless explicitly permitted. Bennett Cole sat across from them with a recording device, his expression professional but curious. Ready? Miles reached for Ilara's hand. Ready? Let's start with the obvious question. Bennett began. Miles, you walked away from a billion-dollar company you built from nothing. Why? Because I finally understood what success actually means, Miles said. For years I measured it in buildings and deals and quarterly earnings. Then I discovered I had 2 children I didn't know existed. And suddenly, none of that mattered. The only measurement that counted was whether I could be the father they deserved. Some people have suggested this was an impulsive decision. A midlife crisis, perhaps. Miles felt Ilara's hand tighten in his. Some people want to believe that because it's easier than accepting that someone might choose family over fortune. But this wasn't impulsive. It was the most deliberate choice I've ever made. Ilara, Bennett turned to her. You raised the twins alone for nearly 2 years. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, Ilara said quietly. There were nights when I didn't think I'd make it to morning. When both babies were sick and crying, and I was running on 3 hours of sleep over 2 days. But I also had moments of pure joy. First steps, first words. First time they made each other laugh. I wouldn't trade those moments for anything. Why didn't you tell Miles about the pregnancy? This was the question they'd prepared for, but it still hurt to answer. Ilara looked at Miles, drawing strength from his steady presence. Because I loved him too much to trap him, she said. We'd separated for good reasons. Incompatible priorities. Different visions for the future. Finding out I was pregnant felt like forcing a choice on him that he wasn't ready to make. I thought I was protecting everyone by handling it alone. And now? Bennett asked. Do you regret that decision? Yes and no, Ilara admitted. I regret that Julian and Miles missed those first months together, but I don't regret giving Miles the space to choose fatherhood genuinely, not out of obligation. When he found out on New Year's Eve, he could have walked away, sent money, maintained distance. Instead, he chose to be present. That choice means everything. Bennett turned back to Miles. There are reports that your mother, Margaret Harrington, filed a complaint with Child Protective Services. Care to comment? Miles had debated whether to address this directly. His lawyers had advised against it. But Ilara deserved the truth to be public, deserved not to carry this burden in silence. My mother disagrees with my life choices, Miles said carefully. She believes I'm making a mistake by stepping away from the company. The CPS complaint is her attempt to force me back by threatening what matters most to me, my children's safety and Ilara's peace of mind. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth, and I'm not afraid to say it publicly because I'm not ashamed of my choices. I'm proud of the life we're building, proud of the father I'm becoming. If that makes me unstable in her eyes, so be it. Ilara spoke up. The investigator came to our home. She saw 2 happy, healthy children in a loving environment. That's the reality, regardless of what narratives people want to create. Speaking of narratives, Bennett said, you two are clearly more than just co-parents now. Miles and Ilara exchanged glances. They'd agreed to be honest, but this felt vulnerable in a different way. We're figuring it out, Ilara said. We loved each other before, separated for good reasons, and now we're trying to build something better. Something that accounts for who we are now, not who we were. Is marriage in the future? Maybe, Miles said. But we're not rushing. We have time to do this right. The interview continued for another hour, covering Miles's new architectural work, Ilara's career, their daily routine with the twins. By the end, even Bennett looked moved. This is going to be a powerful piece, he said as they wrapped up. Thank you for being so open. After the crew left, Miles and Ilara sat in the quiet apartment, the twins napping in the other room. That felt terrifying, Ilara admitted. But necessary, Miles said. Now the story is ours, not hers. His phone rang. Robert Chen. Miles, have you seen the news? What news? Your mother just held a press conference. She's claiming you're having a breakdown, that you've become obsessed with playing family to the detriment of your mental health. She's got statements from former colleagues, documentation of missed meetings, everything. Miles felt cold fury settle over him. She's escalating. She's trying to force your hand before your interview publishes. Miles, this is bad. She's got major outlets running with it. Miles hung up and pulled up his newsfeed. There it was. Concerns mount over Miles Harrington's mental state. Family members seek intervention. The articles painted him as unstable, obsessive, potentially dangerous. His mother had given interviews expressing deep concern for his well-being and worry about the children's safety. Ilara read over his shoulder, her face draining of color. She's trying to destroy you. She's trying to destroy us, Miles corrected. But she's too late. He called Bennett. How fast can you publish? We were planning on next month's issue. Publish it now. Online. Today if possible. I'll waive all review rights. Just get our story out before hers takes hold. Miles, that's risky. Do it. Please. 6 hours later, as Miles and Ilara were putting the twins to bed, the article went live. Miles Harrington, on leaving it all behind. A conversation about fatherhood, love, and what really matters. The photos were beautiful. Miles reading to Julian, Ilara laughing with Ivy, all 4 of them tangled together on the couch. The interview was raw and honest, showing not a man in crisis, but a man who'd finally found clarity. Within an hour, it had gone viral. Within 3 hours, the narrative began to shift. People saw through Margaret's manipulation. They saw a father choosing his children, a woman protecting her family, a couple trying to build something real. Miles's phone exploded with messages of support. Former clients, old friends, people he hadn't heard from in years all saying the same thing. Good for you. This is what matters. But the most important message came from Lisa Torres, the CPS investigator. Investigation closed. No evidence of endangerment. Children are clearly thriving. Case dismissed. Ilara burst into tears when Miles showed her the email. It's over. They can't take them. Miles held her while she cried, relief and exhaustion finally breaking through her carefully maintained composure. We're safe, he murmured. We're all safe. The next morning, Miles's doorbell rang at his penthouse. He still owned it, though he rarely stayed there anymore. When he opened it, his mother stood there looking older than he'd ever seen her. May I come in? Miles almost said no, but something in her expression made him step aside. Margaret walked to the windows overlooking Central Park, the same view Miles had stared at countless times while building his empire. You won, she said quietly. The board voted this morning to accept my resignation. The publicity around the CPS complaint backfired spectacularly. I'm out. Miles waited, not trusting himself to speak. I thought I was protecting you, Margaret continued, from making a mistake, from throwing away everything you'd worked for. But I see now that I was really protecting myself, my vision of who you should be, my need to control the legacy I helped you build. She turned to face him. I was wrong, Miles. About the company, about those children, about that woman. I see that now. Do you? Miles kept his voice neutral. Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear? I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even deserve the chance to know my grandchildren. Margaret's voice cracked slightly. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. Truly sorry. And if there's ever a time when you're ready to let me try to be a better mother and grandmother, I'll be waiting. She left before Miles could respond, the door closing softly behind her. Miles stood alone in the penthouse that had once been his whole world, looking out at the city that had defined him for so long. Then he pulled out his phone and called Ilara. Hey, she answered. Everything okay? My mother just came by. Resigned from the company. Apologized. Do you believe her? Miles considered this. I don't know. Maybe. Eventually. But right now, I'm more interested in getting back to Brooklyn. Julian promised to show me his new block tower and I don't want to be late. He could hear the smile in Ilara's voice. Then you better hurry. You know how he gets when Dada's late. I'm on my way. Miles grabbed his keys and took one last look at the penthouse. This had been his castle, his fortress, his proof that he'd made it. But home was a one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn with crayon marks on the walls and toys scattered on the floor. Home was a woman who'd trusted him when he didn't deserve it, and 2 children who called him Dada with uncomplicated love. Home was exactly where he was going. And this time, Miles Harrington knew he'd never lose his way again. 6 months after the Architectural Digest interview published, Miles stood in the backyard of the house he'd been renovating for the past 4 months. Not a mansion, not a penthouse, just a 3-bedroom craftsman in Park Slope with a small yard, good schools nearby and enough space for a family to grow. He'd designed every detail himself. The open kitchen where Ilara could cook while watching the twins play, the nursery with built-in bookshelves and a reading nook, the office where he could work on residential projects while still being present. Most importantly, the master bedroom had an ensuite bathroom, which meant Ilara wouldn't have to share with the twins anymore. Dada, look! Julian's voice called from across the yard. Miles turned to see his son pointing at a butterfly that had landed on the newly planted flowers. I see it, buddy. It's beautiful. Ivy ran over, wanting to chase the butterfly, but Miles caught her gently. Let's watch instead of chasing. See how pretty it is. Ivy studied the butterfly with serious concentration, then looked up at Miles. We be quiet? Very quiet, Miles confirmed. It was these moments, small, ordinary, perfect, that Miles had come to treasure most. Not the grand gestures or dramatic revelations, but the simple act of teaching his daughter to appreciate beauty without destroying it. Ilara emerged from the house carrying lemonade and sandwiches. She'd moved in 2 weeks ago, after months of careful steps forward, of proving that this time was different, that they were building something sustainable. Lunch is ready, she called. Wash your hands first. The twins ran to the outdoor faucet Miles had installed specifically for this purpose. Sticky hands after playing in the yard had become a daily occurrence. Miles watched them help each other reach the water, Julian lifting Ivy slightly so she could wash properly. They'd grown so much in 6 months. Julian was speaking in full sentences now, asking endless questions about how things worked. Ivy had developed a stubborn streak and a laugh that could light up a room. They fought over toys and hugged fiercely when one was upset. They were siblings, best friends, wholly themselves, and they were his. You're doing it again, Ilara said softly, coming to stand beside him. Doing what? Looking at them like you can't quite believe they're real. Miles smiled. Can you blame me? Sometimes I still wake up thinking this is a dream, that I'll open my eyes and be back in that penthouse alone, having missed all of this. Ilara leaned against his shoulder. Well, you're not. You're here. They're real. We're real. After lunch, while the twins napped inside, their new bedroom had blackout curtains and a sound machine, luxuries Ilara's old apartment had never afforded. Miles found Ilara in the kitchen, washing dishes. Leave them, he said. I want to show you something. He led her upstairs to the master bedroom, where he'd been working on a surprise. The room was finished now. Creamy walls, large windows overlooking the backyard, a king-sized bed that looked impossibly inviting after months of squeezing into Ilara's full size. But it was the wall opposite the bed that Miles was most proud of. He'd created a gallery wall of photos from the past 6 months. The twins' second birthday party, the 4 of them at Coney Island, Julian's first day at preschool, Ivy covered in paint during an art project, Miles and Ilara dancing in the kitchen while the twins laughed. A life documented, a family preserved. Ilara's hand went to her mouth. Miles, I know we've been taking things slow, Miles said, turning to face her. I know we agreed no rushing, no pressure. But Ilara, I need you to know something. He took her hands, his heart pounding harder than it ever had in any boardroom. 6 months ago, I thought I was choosing between my career and my family, but I wasn't. I was choosing between existing and actually living, between success and significance, between being important and being loved. Tears were already forming in Ilara's eyes. You gave me a chance I didn't deserve. You let me prove that I could be more than the man who put work first. And every single day when I see our children happy and healthy, when I watch you trust me with them, when I get to fall asleep next to you and wake up to this life, I know I made the right choice. Miles reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Ilara's breath caught. I'm not asking because it's expected, or because we have kids together, or because it makes a good story, Miles said, opening the box to reveal a simple platinum band with a single diamond. I'm asking because I want to spend the rest of my life choosing you, every day, in every way, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. He dropped to one knee, and Ilara's tears spilled over. Ilara Moore, will you marry me? For a moment, Ilara just stared at him, tears streaming down her face. Then she laughed, that beautiful, uninhibited laugh he'd fallen in love with 6 years ago. You're proposing in an empty bedroom while our children nap downstairs, she said. I am. It's so perfectly us. She pulled him to his feet, cupping his face in her hands. Yes, yes, I'll marry you. 1,000 times yes. Miles slipped the ring onto her finger and she kissed him, deep and certain and full of promise. When they pulled apart, both were crying and laughing at the same time. I love you, Ilara whispered. I never stopped loving you, even when I was trying to. I love you too. Always have. Always will. A small voice from the doorway interrupted them. Mama? Dada? They turned to find Julian standing there, rubbing his eyes, Ivy right behind him. Both looked confused but curious about why their parents were crying and hugging. Miles scooped up Julian while Ilara grabbed Ivy, and suddenly all 4 of them were tangled together in the middle of their new bedroom, in their new house, at the beginning of their new life. We have something to tell you, Ilara said to the twins. Dada asked Mama to marry him. We're going to be a family. Officially. Julian looked between them seriously. We not family now? Miles laughed. We're family now, buddy. But this makes it extra official. Okay, Julian said, satisfied with this answer. Can we have cake? Why would we have cake? Ilara asked. People have cake when happy, Julian explained with the logic of a 2.5-year-old. You happy, so cake. Miles and Ilara burst out laughing. You know what? He's right. Let's go get cake. They piled into the car. Miles had traded his luxury sedan for an SUV with proper car seats and drove to their favorite bakery in Brooklyn, the one where they'd taken the twins for their birthday, where the owner knew their order by heart. As they sat at a small table watching Julian and Ivy devour chocolate cake with more enthusiasm than technique, Miles reached across and took Ilara's hand. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For giving me a second chance? For believing I could change for these 2 perfect, messy, beautiful children? For this life? Ilara squeezed his hand. Thank you for choosing it. For choosing us. Not everyone would have. Everyone else is missing out. Miles said, watching Ivy try to feed Julian a bite of cake and mostly miss his mouth. This is everything. That night, after the twins were bathed and in bed, in their new room with the blackout curtains and the mural Miles had painted of a forest with hidden animals, Miles and Alara stood in the doorway, watching them sleep. "You know what I just realized?" Alara whispered. "What?" "A year ago, I was alone in a one-bedroom apartment, convinced I'd made the right choice keeping them from you. Convinced I was protecting everyone by handling everything myself. And now? Now I can't imagine doing this without you." She turned to look at him. "You've become such an incredible father, Miles. They're so lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one," Miles said, pulling her close. "All of this, you, them, this life, it's more than I ever thought I deserved." "You deserve it," Alara said firmly. "You earned it. By showing up, day after day, even when it was hard, by choosing love over ego, by being brave enough to change." They went to their own room, in their house with their children sleeping safely down the hall, and Miles felt a peace he'd never experienced before. He'd spent 15 years building an empire, measuring success in dollars and deals and buildings that touched the sky. But lying there with Alara in his arms, knowing his children were safe and loved, knowing he'd get to wake up tomorrow and do this all over again, that was the real empire. That was the only success that mattered. And Miles Harrington, former CEO, current father and fiancé, had finally figured out what it meant to have it all. Not everything, just the things that were real, just the things that would last, just love. 5 years later, Miles stood in the backyard of their Park Slope house. Bigger now, with an addition he'd designed himself to accommodate their growing family, watching chaos unfold with the kind of calm that only came from experience. Julian, now 7.5, was attempting to teach his younger sister, 3-year-old Sophie, how to kick a soccer ball. Ivy, also 7.5, was in the treehouse Miles had built last summer, reading a book and occasionally shouting down corrections to her twin brother's coaching technique. "Julian, you're confusing her," Ivy called. "Sophie, just kick it, don't think so much." "I am teaching her proper form," Julian shouted back with the indignation of someone whose expertise was being questioned. Sophie, caught between her older siblings' advice, simply picked up the ball with her hands and ran with it, laughing as Julian chased her. Miles smiled, making mental notes for the chaos. This was his life now. Beautiful, loud, completely imperfect. Alara emerged from the house, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing paint-splattered jeans from the mural project she'd been working on in Sophie's room. She'd left the marketing firm 3 years ago to start her own design studio, working from the converted garage office Miles had built for her. "Your mother just called," Alara said, settling beside Miles on the porch swing he'd installed 2 years ago. "She wants to confirm Sunday dinner and asked if Sophie has any food preferences she should know about." Miles still marveled at this sometimes. His mother, who'd once tried to destroy them, now asking about his youngest daughter's dietary preferences. The reconciliation had been slow, painful, requiring family therapy and countless difficult conversations. But Margaret had done the work, proven through consistent action that she'd changed. She'd never get back the first years with the twins, but she was building something real with them now. And with Sophie, born 2 years after the wedding, Margaret had been present from the beginning, cautious, respectful of boundaries, but genuinely loving. "Sophie's in a chicken nugget phase," Miles said, "though she'll eat anything if Ivy's eating it." "That twin worship is real," Alara laughed. "Remember when Julian convinced Ivy that broccoli was tiny trees and she ate a whole plate? And then told everyone at preschool that her brother was a vegetable wizard." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play. This was Miles's favorite time of day. Late afternoon sun, everyone home, no urgent deadlines or crises, just family existing together. His phone buzzed. A text from Robert Chen. "New harbor project approved. Board wants to know if you're interested in consulting. Your choice, no pressure." Miles had maintained a consulting relationship with Harrington Architecture, now Chen Whitmore Architecture, after Robert and Patricia took over leadership. He took on maybe 3 projects a year, always on his terms, always with clear boundaries about availability. He typed back, "Send me the details. If timeline works with Sophie's preschool schedule, I'm interested." "Work?" Alara asked, reading over his shoulder. A habit from 5 years of complete transparency with each other. "Maybe. Harbor project. Could be interesting. But Sophie starts gymnastics next month, and Julian has that science fair thing, and Ivy's birthday party is coming up. Miles smiled. So we'll see if it fits. Look at you, prioritizing family schedules over billion-dollar projects, Ilara teased, but her eyes were warm. Who are you and what have you done with Miles Harrington? Miles Harrington learned that billion-dollar projects will always be there, but Sophie being 3, Julian being 7, Ivy's first chapter book obsession, these are happening right now, and I'm not missing them. Ilara leaned her head on his shoulder. You know what I was thinking about today? What? That night on New Year's Eve, when you saw me with the twins for the first time. Her voice went soft with memory. I was so terrified, certain you'd be angry or worse, indifferent. I'd played out 1,000 scenarios in my head and none of them ended well. And now? Now we're sitting here with 3 kids, a mortgage, and a mother-in-law who bakes cookies every Sunday. Ilara laughed. It's so far from any scenario I imagined, it's better. Miles pulled her closer. Do you ever regret not telling me sooner? Think about how different things might have been if I'd known from the beginning. Ilara was quiet for a moment, considering. Sometimes I wonder. But Miles, I don't think you were ready then. I don't think I was ready for you to be ready, if that makes sense. We both needed to grow into the people who could build this. She gestured at the house, the yard, their children playing. Maybe everything happened exactly when it was supposed to. Even the hard parts, especially the hard parts. They made us strong enough to handle this, to handle each other. Sophie ran over, breathless and grass-stained. Mama, Dada. Julian says I can't be on his soccer team because I'm too little, but Ivy says girls can do anything boys can do, and now they're fighting and… Whoa, slow down, sweetheart, Miles said, lifting Sophie into his lap. Let's break this down. First, you're not too little. Second, Ivy's right that girls can do anything boys can do. But third, maybe you don't want to be on Julian's team. Maybe you want your own team. Sophie's eyes lit up. My own team? Sure. Team Sophie. Population. You. Motto. Having fun is more important than winning. Can Ivy be on my team? If she wants to be. Sophie scrambled down and ran back to her siblings. Ivy, Dada says we can make our own team. Miles and Ilara watched as their 3 children immediately began planning Team Sophie and Ivy, with Julian reluctantly agreeing to be the opposing force they'd practice against. You're good at that, Ilara observed. At what? At seeing what they need before they know they need it. At making them feel heard without fixing everything for them. I learned from the best, Miles said, squeezing her hand. You've been doing that for them since before I even knew they existed. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the family moved inside for dinner. It was chaotic. Sophie spilled her milk. Julian and Ivy argued about whose turn it was to pick the dinner conversation topic. The dog, a rescue they'd adopted last year, stole food off plates when no one was looking. It was messy and loud, and nothing like the quiet, controlled life Miles had once lived. It was perfect. Later, after all 3 children were bathed and in bed, a process that now took both parents working in tandem, Miles and Ilara collapsed on their couch. 3 kids is no joke, Ilara said, her head in Miles's lap. Remember when we thought 2 was hard? We were so naive, Miles agreed, running his fingers through her hair. Should we tell them? Ilara's hand moved to her still flat stomach, a secret smile on her face. Not yet. Let's keep it just ours for a little while longer. A baby number 4 discovered just last week. Unplanned but already loved. Another adventure in a life that had become one beautiful adventure after another. 4 kids, Miles marveled. My mother's going to lose her mind. Your mother's going to be thrilled and you know it. Yeah, Miles admitted. She really will be. He thought about the man he'd been 5 years ago. Driven, successful, hollow. That man had measured his worth in buildings and bank accounts, had believed that vulnerability was weakness, and that love was a distraction from real achievement. That man had been so wrong about everything that mattered. Miles? Ilara's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Do you ever miss it? The company? The prestige? Being important? Miles looked around their living room. Toys scattered despite their best efforts to clean up. Crayon drawings taped to the walls. Photos of their growing family covering every surface. Through the baby monitor, he could hear Julian talking in his sleep. Something about soccer strategies. I am important, Miles said quietly. To 3, soon to be 4, little people who think I hung the moon. To a woman who trusted me when I didn't deserve it. To a family that wouldn't exist if I'd chosen differently. He looked down at Ilara, this woman who'd changed everything. The company made me successful. But this? This makes me significant, and there's a world of difference between the two. Ilara's eyes filled with tears. When did you get so wise? When I finally started paying attention to what actually mattered. He leaned down to kiss her. Best decision I ever made. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. Deals were being made, empires built, ambitious people climbing toward success. Inside this house in Park Slope, Miles Harrington had already found everything worth having, not in boardrooms or bank accounts, but in sticky kisses and bedtime stories, in a wife who challenged him to be better, in children who loved him not for what he could provide, but for who he chose to be, in ordinary moments that added up to an extraordinary life. He'd lost an empire and gained a world. Looking back at Miles and Ilara's journey, from that frozen moment on New Year's Eve to this beautiful, chaotic family life, what choice would you have made? Would you have chosen love over legacy, family over fortune? Would you have had the courage to start over, to trust again, to build something real from broken pieces? Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.